Hey guys, welcome back to Arts and Crafts. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a super easy balaclava with cute bunny add-ons. So we're just going to jump right into it. For materials, I will be working with the soft classic acrylic. This is a level 4 yarn. For this project, I would recommend using a level 4 or 5 if you want it to turn out the way that mine is going to look. And I will also be working with a 6mm hook. Again, you can move up or down 0.5, but it may turn out different than mine. So I do recommend using a 6mm hook and either a 4 or 5 level yarn. You are going to want to measure your head at the biggest point, but also keeping in mind that the yarn is going to stretch over time. So I like to leave a tiny bit of room to make sure it is tight. To start, we need a slip knot, so I hold it in my back 2 fingers over like an X to create the 2. Take my hook under the first one and grab the second one. I'm pulling my fingers out, but holding the 2 strings and then pulling it closed. So now you are going to chain the number that you measured earlier. This is obviously going to be a different number depending on the size of your head. So we built up the chain, and as you can see, it gets really close, but it's still tight. And that's how you want your first chain to look like. First, we want to make sure that our string is straight. So I just like to run my fingers along, keeping it flat. And we're gonna go in to create a circle and connect with a slip stitch. So through, yarn over both. We are now going to chain 1 and work a single crochet into this next top stitch right here. Yarn over through and pull 2. Next one, pull 2, looking like that. And we are just going to work single crochets into every stitch all the way around. That is one more chain right there. And then slip stitch back into these 2 chains, both of those. Through and through. For round 2, you're going to chain 1. And we're going to be working single crochets again, but in the back loops only. So there's the front and there's the back. So I'm going to go through this one only. All the way around, through both. So it looks like that. This time you can just slip stitch into the top of the V, through and yarn over. And that is how we are looking so far. And once again, we are just going to chain 1, single crochet into the back loop, all the way around. This is the bottom of our balaclava. This is going to be our neck, and we are going to build it up until the top of our nose, pretty much where we're going to start our eye hole. So doing the exact same thing of chaining 1 and working single crochets into the back loop, connecting it, chain 1, single crochets, and keep trying it on. This is going to depend on your size. So I'm going to go away and build this up, and I will come back when we are on that part. So this is how tall mine is. The next step is going to be marking where you want your eye holes to be. You can use stitch markers or whatever you want. I just use little hair clips because I'm cheap. I'm gonna say like here, and we'll try and do the same on this side. I'm leaving like just a little finger, close those off. Off my face. And I should have also mentioned, I always keep where we connect to the back. No one wants to see that, okay? Keep that to the back. So now I'm going to build up this next chain until we get to the stitch marker, and then we'll go from there. So as you can see, I have 2 more stitches, including my stitch marker. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to work my single crochets all the way into that last where we had the stitch marker. And now I'm going to count the number of chains in between my 2 stitch markers. For me, that is 17. So then I'm just going to chain 17. making sure it is flat, and I'm going to go into the stitch marker on the other side do here like that, and instead of slip stitching, we're going to single crochet into that first one. So then this is what we are looking like. And now we are just going to finish going around this row till we meet and slip stitch back at the end. So here we are coming on the end of our row, going into that last stitch and slip stitching together. And now we're just going to continue to build out these rows. Obviously, when we get to this point, we're just going to be single crocheting into the top here, leaving the gap and working our way up. So I will do that with you a little bit. I've chained one and I'm working my single crochets all the way along, and I will meet you when I have reached my chain. And here I've worked my chain along. So now I'm going to start doing the single crochets into the chain and just working a single crochet into every chain along here. This is what is looking like so far, about halfway. Just continuing to work along the chain. And over back to the side. We are starting to make our hole, and once again you are just going to work these single crochets in the round all the way until it reaches about above your head. And I will come back when mine is built up to show you how tall that should be. I also just want to show if you are planning on changing color. So as you can see, I have ended a row here and I'm just at the part where I'm going to slip stitch back to the other side. So I'm going to put it through like I'm going to slip stitch, but instead of pulling this through, I'm gonna pull the yarn and hold it over here. I'm gonna take my new color and I'm gonna pull that through and slip stitch instead. And then I just like to flip the work, get the new string out of the way. You can cut the old string and then take the small end of your new color and your old color and tie those together a couple times. So it looks like that. And you're ready to start your row with a chain of one and continuing the single crochets all the way along. Okay, we are just finishing up our last row. I'm going to slip stitch into the other side. Obviously, as I've been building this up, I have been putting it on and checking to make sure this is great. Let's just leave it like this. So I built it up with a good amount coming out of here because we're gonna sew this in. And so once you are happy with the length, after you've done your last slip stitch, I'm going to chain one more. And we're going to tie this off, but we are going to leave a pretty good amount of string left over because we're going to be sewing in the end. So a good rule of thumb is I like to take the top and just kind of like wrap the string around a couple times, 4 or 5 just to be extra safe. And then you're just going to cut that off so we have this when we're ready to sew in. But we're actually going to put that off to the side, and we're first going to do our finishing touches around the eyes and the bottom. You can do this in any order you want. I just find it's easier to work on the details before this turns into a little ball, you know? So now that we have our mask ready to go, we are going to take our detailing color. I'm using this funky color changing fluffy yarn. It's a Karen Latte Cakes. So you're just gonna slip stitch to your hook like we've been doing, go through these 2 loops and do a slip stitch so it is connected. And then I like to weave in this end as I go. So now I'm going to do a slip stitch in the next and into the next. And we are just working our single crochets all the way around until we meet at the corner. But the one thing I do want to say is you want to be aware of the tension. If you make your stitches too tight around here, it's just gonna like bunch up weird. Just a little tip that I use is when you're pulling through like this, I just like to make sure that these 2 strings are level. So when I hold it like this, and then I know that when I pull it through, they're not gonna be fighting for the tension. All the way along to the corner. Here we are. As you can see, this is that corner stitch. Now you have 2 options for doing this for how you want your hole to look. If you want to keep this like tight and a small hole, what you are going to do is do a decrease into this corner. So you're just gonna go through the corner and then through the next one and yarn over all 3. And then you would just continue to go across here and do another decrease in these 2 stitches in the corner. Now if you want to make the hole kind of wider, more like that, which is what I'm going to do, we're going to go back to where we meet at the corner. And we're just going to do the opposite, where we are increasing in this corner. So that is just 2 single crochets into the corner. And I'm actually going to do another increase in the next stitch, just because I kind of want the hole to be a decent size, but that is going to be personal preference, so you might have to play around with it a little bit and see what you like. But that's what it looks like with the 2 increases. And then we're just going to do the same thing along the bottom. And here we are at our other corner. I'm just going to repeat what we did on the other side. So I'm going to increase in this stitch, and then increase in the next. Working my way back along the bottom. And here we are coming up to where we started. I'm going to work my last single crochet into this stitch. And then I'm just going to slip stitch back into the first and tie that off. This is what that detail is looking like. So I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same detail on the bottom, and then I will come back when we are on our final step. And that is what the bottom trim is like. Just one tip I would give you is to start in the back, just so the front looks nice and clean. And now obviously our final step is actually turning this into some sort of toque. So taking our top open end and our super long string that we kept. So I've just gone ahead and attached something to sew in the ends. Yours does not have to be as ridiculously long as mine is. Any sewing in needle will work. So I'm just going to start with where this ends, and I'm just going to weave in and out. It doesn't have to be every chain. I'm kind of going every second chain, and we are just going to weave in and out all the way around until we meet back to our start. And here we are, if you can see, that's our knot where we started. So I'm going to do one last to get right next to it. And then we are just going to pull this shut. And then I just kind of work it out so the tension is even on all sides. So now you can see it's starting to build shape. So once you have tightened it up and worked on your tension, my string is here. So I'm going to go across. And now I'm just going to start kind of weaving a couple times across and around to close in that hole. Looking way better. And once you're happy with that, I just like to go through a close loop. And now we are just going to tie this off a whole bunch so it is super secure. And once you're happy with how that's tied off, obviously besides sewing in the ends, but I will leave that up to you, flip this inside out, and there you have your finished balaclava. Watch the eyelashes. So this is what it's looking like all done. Super cute. It's giving egg moment. So if you only want to make the balaclava, obviously you are all done. But I'm going to add some bunny ears onto it because I am personally not a huge fan of the egg shape. So we're gonna fix that with some cute bunny ears. And if you want to see how I make the bunny ears, I will link that down below. And I thought since I'm just about to attach them, why not bring you along on that super easy process? I can show you the real final product. Let's get these attached. This part is super easy. All we're going to do is, with that long string that I told you to leave, you're going to tie your sewing needle onto the end of it, and then we are just going to figure out where we want to place our ear. And I'm gonna go right on this line and about the side, so like somewhere like there. So now all I'm going to do is take my sewing needle and start weaving in and out. So we're gonna go in and pull it into its spot. Don't worry about these strings, I'm just gonna tuck them under. We're gonna deal with those later. And now from the inside of the hat, you're gonna go next to it, like so, and then you're also going to grab the ear and pull that up. And you're just gonna work this all the way along, sewing on the ear, going in through both the hat and the ear. So we're just gonna weave this all the way across. And then the only thing is when we're coming up to the end here, I like to make sure that my last sewing in is going down. So I'm gonna go right into this corner. And once you've gone along and you're happy with how that is secure, you're going to flip your hat inside out. And then I just like to go into a loop close by like this. And now you're just gonna tie it off a couple times to make sure that it is on there really secure. Once you've tied that off a few times, I just cut that off. And then if you flip it back around, that is what it is looking like. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other ear, and then I will show you the finished product. And just like that, look how cute! She is all done. I think the bunny ears really help make it look less egg-shaped. This is what we got! Overall, I think this was a really fun and easy project. I hope you found this helpful and informative, and you can make the cutest little bunny balclavas of your dreams. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, peace!